So perhaps you could just quickly tell us how that whole evening went.
For me, it was an important evening because it was a chance for the Premier to come to the Arts Centre for the first time. He'd ever been inside Fremantle Arts Centre. To meet with, I think, what is a lot of energy in Fremantle at the moment. We invited lots of people and are really diverse, from community groups to developers and everybody in between. And to hear that there is a mood for change in Fremantle and a mood to actually get Fremantle moving forward in a progressive manner. So for him to actually be willing to sit and listen to me speak for, and state what we wanted to do, was I think a great opportunity. And also for him to then to go and speak to all of those. And he actually, what for me was especially good is he stayed around for an hour and a half afterwards to talk to people. And I think it is filtering through of that some change afoot in Fremantle. There's an aside to that story. I was at a Green Building Council lunch this week and sat next to Charles Johnson from the Department of Planning, who first thing he said to me was, I hear there's lots happening down in Fremantle. In fact, we're seriously considering upgrading you back into a primary regional centre. But now you've got to live up to it. So there was that. So, and I guess that's what's important from one of the key roles, I guess, as a mayor and as a councillor, is to actually get that mood out there that things can and should happen, and we would support that, which I think's happened for the last 10 or 15 years. Is everyone's just kind of given up and assumed that Fremantle just wants to stagnate.
So you've got that on the agenda. He's heard it. The bureaucracy's hearing it, and they don't seem to be put off by the fact that it's coming from a Green perspective.
No. And I guess one I've been really careful to say, as a mayor, I'm not in party politics. It's something I'm not involved in. So but also I think what's really interesting, and Adele deserves some credit here, that she's worked very hard to build strong relationships between the Greens and the Liberal Party. And there's no doubt the Liberals have their reasons for doing that themselves in terms of keeping Labor out. But I guess that actually opens up the space for some conversations and where they might be willing to entertain and speak about things they wouldn't otherwise, which is really good.
The link with Adele, if you could just tell us a little bit about that, because now you have a Green member for Fremantle, and she's presumably standing for the same kind of policy. She wants to make a sustainable city. And yet there are going to be times of conflict, I would think, and there have been.
Well, there's two issues in which Adele kind of was attacking council on, was the Fremantle markets, and then going one around that, and the dredging. And then I actually ended up having to call a meeting with her and say, it's time, you can keep going down this route of just, attacking council from the side, or we can actually work together and actually get some really good things done. And that was a very fiery meeting, to be honest with you. It was one of those meetings that's quite reasonably unpleasant, but it was good in the sense of it broke through that, and she understood that my view was neither of those things she was going to get no runs on the board on either of those things, and that's why I wasn't engaging with them, because there was no point in putting energy into something that you can't change. But by focusing on other things together, we could get some really good runs on the board. And the things we agreed on, and we're starting to see those come into fruition already, were renewable energy, including the wind farm on Rouse Head. And she's gone really public and really hard on that since, which has been great. Sustainable housing, sustainable buildings, and also we've, as part of broader urban planning and sustainability. And, just stop me if I'm rambling too much, but I think ultimately there's a really interesting question about the Greens that underlies this, and it was partly why there is that little bit of a tension between Adele and I. And I think because there's one level, I think there's progressive Greens, this is a kind way of putting ourselves, and I think I can't be in the same boat, Peter, but there's also an unkind way of saying the other side would be kind of not in my backyard, quite conservative Greens. But maybe this is a way of inverting that, which would be that we're light green and they're darker green.
They like to say they're dark green, but when they only are there to stop things, it's actually NIMBY.
And I think that tension is a big tension within the Fremantle Greens. In fact, we saw, I think, the NIMBY Greens actually really almost take hold, which I was really concerned before the mayoral election. I was like, I remember going to a Greens drinks, and every person in the room was doing everything they could not to get me elected. So, yeah, and that's actually been really good for me, because I feel like party politics, I can quite honestly say party politics is not relevant to my job, because I was not elected as a Green. I had no support from the Greens at all, and I'm happy to work with the Greens on key issues, but that's it.
I hadn't realised there was so much personal attack on you though.
Oh yeah, so but
when that happens, because you're coming from a similar base, you would think so.
Yeah, that's right. And what you saw though was a really interesting alliance between where at the Greens events before the mayoral election, it was the Fremantle Society were the dominant people who were there. So there was that real kind of interesting collaboration between the Fremantle Society and the Greens, which I was thought we can see if it lasts into the future. I suspect not, but around that idea, which is very much clearly a case of Greens being about stopping development and saving things, and but for me, that, and I guess that's just not the issue anymore. We've actually got to build new cities with new things if you're going to meet the sustainability challenge. You can't meet that challenge just by stopping things anymore.
No.
So.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's a very important principle, and generally will underlie most of what we talk about. The second one is how you do that in stages. The dark green means, it seems to me, that you look at any particular policy and you see how shallow it is in terms of the implementation, and you see, you know, a dark green policy would be doing X, Y, and Z because it is so much deeper and more extensive. And it is just pure naivety, however, to think that somehow you bring it in like that. Have you got a comment on that in terms of how Fremantle is operating?
I mean, it is a really, it's such a big question. I think, for me as well, we can't, I mean, I think probably all of us agree where we want to end up, and I think it's about how you get there. And my view is, like you, that ultimately there are a whole bunch of steps along the way, and as long as they're not taking you away from that goal, which is I think of a socially equitable, low carbon, strong, a really strong community and a vibrant economy, which is something I think we can all agree we're like for. As long as it's not taking away from that, then I think we need to acknowledge that it's going to be those small steps that get us there eventually. It is a real challenge though, and I must say this is that issue I'm currently feeling challenged by in relation to the East End, because part of me thinks I would love just to demand that the whole area has to be on renewable energy and has to be, based in. You can only build 6-star green developments up there, but then the reality is I'll probably get nothing built if I was to do that.
Okay, so that's actually exactly what I'm talking about, because the politics of change is about getting development and doing it in a way that is achievable. If it's not achievable, no point in doing it.
Yeah.
It's just waving a flag. And the Indigenous issues?
It's been really interesting. In fact, the front page of the Herald today, I don't know if you've seen it or not, is it's an interesting one. The front page of the Herald today is Elder calls for street drinking crackdown.
Okay.
So, but it's interesting, and I guess the reason I show that is because a lot of the work I've been doing on this over the last month has been meeting with Indigenous elders, and they've been coming to the city and to me to say, okay, we've had enough. We really need your help to bring some change about, which has been great, because nothing is kind of better than me saying we want to bring change about. You just feel like you just be another white person kind of.
Yes. Well, all of those issues seem to me to be quite a package of how a sustainability-oriented mayor goes about his job, and it ain't easy, is it?
No, and I guess the real challenge, the other real challenge is just making sure you don't get spread so thinly between those competing demands where you progress nothing.